Hello, everyone. Amazing to be here. Very tough act to follow, that one. I found that incredibly inspiring. Just to quickly explain why I'm here. I started cooking when I was around 4 years old. I was a very greedy child. I loved food. And as a lot of my interests, bricks, dinosaurs, trucks, faded as I grew older, food was something that never dissipated at all for me. It became something that was less introverted. It became something that was more sociable. But as I struggled to decide exactly what it was that I wanted to spend the rest of my life doing, food was always there. I started cooking professionally when I was about 16. I was just finished my GCSEs and I'd started my A-levels. And I needed some money. So I got a job in a kitchen, pot washing, essentially. And immediately became incredibly addicted to the pace of kitchen life. Through my A-levels, and then on through my degree, during which I read English rather distractedly. I was always returning to London from Cambridge to continue working in restaurants, to continue this experience. On leaving university, I got a full-time job working in a kitchen, a restaurant called Great Queen Street. And I'd split my time there between the cookers and the floor and the bar to get a very even coverage of everything I could learn. I opened my first restaurant when I was 23 in an old building. It was a beautiful old Georgian mansion house in London. You have lots of very fine Georgian architecture here in Bath. We have very little of it left in London. And this had been a squat for the last 10 years, but had been taken over by an architectural salvage firm, a bunch of guys who started in the 60s going into old bombed-out buildings and stripping out the bathtubs and the fireplaces before they were demolished and refurbishing them, reusing them, finding new life and new love in old and forgotten things. And this was very attractive to me. I feel like a lot of the joy that can be got from food is taking the time to sit down and appreciate these very lasting things, these ancient vegetables, these ancient animals, this ancient ritual of sitting down and eating with those we love. Brunswick House, I didn't have any money. I was 23, I didn't have any money at all. But I'd saved up about £1,000 in tips, me and my brother, my younger brother. We'd saved up about £1,000 in tips each. And we bought a coffee machine and some cups and a couple of fridges from Argos and opened an espresso bar, basically. That's all it was, making sandwiches and very strong coffee. Over about 6 months of relentless hard work, working about 120 hours a week, but for myself for the first time in my life, which is a marvelous feeling, we managed to get a liquor license, which is a very, very dangerous thing. Because not only does it give you very liberal access to alcohol, but it also finally started to give us a bit of profitability. And that profitability we were able to reinvest to build this small 10-seat espresso bar up into what it is now, which is a rather kind of idiosyncratic, but rather marvelous 70-cover restaurant, turning over somewhere between £1 and £2 million a year, and giving me an amazing kitchen and an amazing tableau, amazing stage on which to continue to come in every day, to cook for people, to speak to people, to meet people, and to feed them. But I don't necessarily just want to talk about myself today at all. I want to talk about how incredibly scared I feel right now. I feel absolutely terrified being up here. And I was thinking, while I was planning what to talk to you all about how I felt when I was 17 or 18, and what the world felt like. And I remember feeling that the world was very confusing. I, as you might imagine, for a teenager who was obsessed with food, wasn't massively popular at that age. I wasn't I was perfectly amiable person at that age. I wasn't nasty or unkind or anything, but I wasn't also, I was very nervous and very insecure. I had a very, very uncertain sense of myself and my place in the world because I wasn't sure who I was and I wasn't really sure what the world was. And thinking about this, thinking about my deep and innate sense of uncertainty and insecurity at that age, I realized that I don't actually feel that different now. I still up here feel incredibly nervous looking out at all of you. The implied demand from me, the idea that I should somehow be inspiring you, I mean, compared to our last speaker, whose amazing adventures I just found not only incredibly exciting, but also deeply undermining. I mean, I've barely left the neighborhood I grew up in. I've always worked. I've always worked in my places that I've built. I've never traveled. I've never seen much of the world. I mean, I want to just leave here right now and get on the first plane I can. I thought that was amazing. But it doesn't change, and it hasn't changed for me. It may change one day, but it hasn't changed for me. I still feel constantly uncertain of what other people are thinking about me, what the world thinks about me, how the world expects me to be, and what I'm expected to give the world in return, what I'm expected to give the people who walk into my restaurants, what I'm expected to give my daughter. I have a 15-month-old daughter now, and I love her more than I could ever imagine loving anything in the world, but the sense of enormous responsibility that comes with fatherhood and the enormous uncertainty of exactly what you're supposed to do is breathtaking. But I don't think this is a bad thing. I think I've been told a lot through my life that insecurity is something you have to get over. It's something that is perhaps self-indulgent or self-involved or, due to not engaging enough with other people. Perhaps we're too insular. I don't think this is true. I think that insecurity often comes from thinking very much about other people and very much about the uncertainty and the constantly shifting nature of our relationships with the world around us. And I also think the sense of nervousness, the sense that the questioning nature of insecurity, the wondering what is expected of us, is actually a very, very fine thing. It means that we're constantly reappraising what we're offering the world around us. It means that we're also constantly re-examining our attitudes towards ourselves and everything around ourselves. Fear can be an enormously motivating thing. And if the attitude of saying yes to everything is an innately very good one, I'd almost take that one step further and say that my attitude, and the reason I'm standing here shaking before you right now, is that I say yes to everything that terrifies me. Anything that feels comfortable and easy and safe, I'm innately suspicious of. I feel that nothing I've ever achieved has been from staying under the metaphorical bedclothes. It was very hard to get here this morning. I had to get up at 6 a.m. to get the train down from London. And it's, if anything, was even colder at 6 a.m. than it is now. And the temptation just to turn the alarm off and stay cozy in my warm bed was great. But I'm incredibly glad I came here. So I'm not sure that this is true for all of you, or necessarily any of you. We're constantly told that the young generation of today, our adolescents, are more connected, more sociable, more engaged with the world around them than any generation before, and I think that's a marvelous thing. So all of this might be completely anathemic to the way you feel. However, there is also a kind of, since the marvelous invention of adolescence sometime in the 1950s, there seems to be a constant strain through late modernity of disillusioned, angry, displaced, and alienated adolescent angst. And a lot of your growing maturity seems to be geared towards an idea of quelling this, quelling your teenage angst, quelling your anxieties. I'm not certain that this is something you should let go of so readily. I think, in fact, a lot of the advantages I've had in being able to build some successful businesses in a very, very competitive and cutthroat industry. I mean, I know London restaurants are a very small and unglamorous little world a long way from here, but, It's very hard work and very demanding and very rewarding, like anything you kind of throw yourself into in your life should be. But to say that my retained or arrested development as an adolescent who still hasn't really torn themselves out of their late teenage period has been a huge advantage to me. And it's something that I think you should all consider as you go through this next period of your life. To return a bit to talking about fear. Now, as a counterpoint to the talk that came before, which was all about the necessity of adventure, I would ask what adventure would be without fear. And I would certainly consider that anything engaged without risk, anything that doesn't carry some innate threat to it, is not worth committing ourselves to. Our lives are short and brief. And it's amazing to think how much of your life you have already been through, probably a good fifth of it by now, and how much at the age of 29 I've been through, which is probably more likely half of mine at the speed I've been living. And how exciting that thought is that there's still so much that I don't know. There's still so much out there that scares me, and there's still so much that makes me incredibly nervous. I find this a really exciting thought. I find this a really challenging thought, but I find it one that means that I know that in spite of everything I've failed at, and I've failed at so many things, and my journey has been incredibly lucky because I started when I was very young and I started very small, and I grew at a very, very delicate, organic rate in a way that I was never able to get myself into a position where I could fail beyond my ability to recover. I remember when my cousin, I had a very, very sweet cousin who was my age, and she died when I was about 14. She had a very tragic accident. She was in the bath, and it was a very windy day, and the heater had all the exhaust fumes of the gas heater blown back down, and she suffocated from carbon monoxide poisoning and died in the bath. And I remember being incredibly shocked by this. And it was very traumatizing to have someone so alive, my own age, so vigorous, so incredibly beautiful and wonderful, die so suddenly and without any meaning at all, just as a kind of cruel accident. And I remember someone saying to me that the most puzzling thing I was feeling was almost a sense of coldness, that I knew that this was a very ultimate thing, but I almost couldn't relate to it, I couldn't understand it. And they said, that's fine, you're an adolescent. When you're a teenager, things often don't impact on you in nearly the same sentimental way they do to adults. You don't cry in the same way, you don't hurt in the same way, you're very much more adaptable. And this was an incredible release. I suddenly no longer felt like a cold-hearted psychopath, and I understood that actually, as a teenager, you're imbued with this great ability to adapt to your surroundings, to adapt to anything, to adapt to any of the shocks of growing. If you think about how much you change between the beginning of puberty and where you are when you're 20, going out into the world as an adult, it's extraordinary that the amount of physical and mental and hormonal and emotional development that happens in that time, and how we just take it for granted, how we just let it just slide off us. I think that's a very important thing to hold on to, and I think that's something that helps you get through. I mean, it certainly helped me get through these early, very clumsy stages of my adulthood, and have certainly helped me not only become someone who can navigate their own life to an extent. I mean, I've never ever been able to work for other people very successfully. I was never very good at being told what to do, and I always thought that was going to be an enormous handicap in life, the fact that I could never let anyone tell me what to do. It's made things very difficult. It certainly made school very difficult, but it's been an enormous advantage later on. This ability to adapt, I think it's very crucial not to let go of this, and it's very crucial to constantly be questioning what really matters to us. There's a lot of pressure to to make certain things matter to you, to make certain relationships, to kind of over-sentimentalize our attachment to certain things, our family, our home, our lovers, our work. But actually, all of these things should be resisted as best as possible. We should make ourselves as insecure and free as we possibly can be, because it's really only then that we can actually determine our own destinies and really take control over the direction of our lives. And it never stops being scary either, In fact, you find ways to make it more scary. Just when I thought I'd got the hang of kind of mid-20s, suddenly late 20s is upon me, and I have a beautiful girlfriend and a beautiful daughter and all sorts of new adult responsibilities, which are more scary than anything else I've ever had before. But wonderful and challenging and inspiring. I think it's very, very hard to talk from a position 10 years on to the next generation about what should inspire them and what should motivate them. I think life is challenging enough in itself that just getting through it day to day, surviving that, is motivational enough, certainly for me. And I'm very wary of coming here and talking to you directly in a didactic way, like coming and lecturing you on what life is like, because I don't know. I have no idea. And I didn't when I was your age either. And I kind of get the feeling that I never will. But as I've got older, I've stopped worrying about that. And what I really wish, I was thinking about what I would have said to myself if I've gone back in 10 years and whether I'd have told myself how my life was going to pan out. And I don't think I would. I think the only advice I'd give myself is you're never going to stop being terrified, but that's going to get a lot more fun. Thank you.